chapter 11, discipleship commandment number 5, no retaliation, which is interesting. So, okay, so we've got the do not resist the evildoer commandment, which you start with that we're going to look at the Deuteronomy scripture in a minute, but Jesus talks about the Deuteronomy scripture in Matthew 5:38, saying, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer," which has been interpreted a lot of weird ways, which we'll talk about later. But then the crux of Jesus's transforming initiative is to say, if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other. If anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, remember the sue you part, because I learned something new in this chapter. Give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to walk for a mile, go the second mile. And there's some interesting observations that Mr. Bolton makes about the Jewish culture and the Roman culture at that time of why Jesus is saying this. Okay, so we all kind of know this scripture generally, but this is us kind of diving a little bit deeper into the turn the other cheek rule. So he uses a couple of people as his references, and I looked Dorothy Jean Weaver up. She describes herself with 3 M's: Mennonite, Matthew, and Middle East. And she looks at the culture of the Middle East as she's reading Matthew, which I think is kind of cool. And so her book called The Irony of Power, if anyone is looking at her books, it engages the Gospel of Matthew in full awareness of its inherently political character. So we've talked a lot about, was Jesus political or apolitical or whatever, and she's like full force saying that the good news of the kingdom is squarely within the real world of first century Palestine. That's what she is arguing, and its occupation power, the Roman Empire. And so Andrew Bolton is telling us how this Sermon on the Mount fits into that culture also, and he's using her as one of the references.
What was her last name again?
Weaver.
Thank you.
So she says that Matthew associates justice, righteousness with the mission and the character of Jesus's followers. And Jesus calls his disciples to strive first for the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And he blesses those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And this justice is above all a way of life. Jesus commends John the Baptist as one who came in the way of righteousness. So, I look over at my board over here, and I don't know how many times people look at it, but one of the things in terms of congregational goals is peace and justice, because it's also one of our enduring principles. And so I look at restorative justice in this light today. What was Jesus saying about restorative justice? And this is all about what does righteousness look like in Matthew. So here's our eye for an eye. And Bolton says that eye for an eye was actually written in Deuteronomy in response to people taking revenge upon their neighbors and their enemies, and so it's like pulling people back a little bit from the revenge, if you believe it. I was gonna say just one eye, yeah.
Well, if you poke out somebody else's eye, then you get to poke out their eye.
Well, I mean, think about road rage incidents. Although I've never been in, fortunately, such a situation, but imagine somebody getting upset about you cutting them off, and then they pull a gun out.
Yeah.
That is not proportional.
Yeah.
That's not proportional to the offense.
Right.
So. Yeah.
Whereas yelling and screaming is okay.
Well.
How would I do that? Okay, so we all know that eye for an eye rule in Deuteronomy. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and this is talking about the court system. And so when someone gives false witness, you must purge that evil from among you. The rest of the people will hear of this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. So it's pretty explicit, you know.
Measured response.
There you go. Measured response. And remember that term, because that term is used in war
That's where I was.
every single day
Yeah.
in our world right now. So, you know, it's interesting to me that we're a Christian nation, and yet this is probably the law we run with the most. The judges don't, though. We'll give the court system a little bit of a break here. You don't. I mean, life for life, yeah, if you have the death penalty, but
You've never been to Sedgwick County.
I have. I try really hard to avoid Sedgwick County. But so that was the old law, measured response. Okay. And of course, the politics of war and retaliation. All of us know that every war in the last, 25 years. I'm just going back to 9/11. The 9/11 response was exactly that.
Didn't he use that in the chapter? And then
He did.
explain how many people died as
Yes.
a result of the
Yes.
3,000
That was chilling.
children.
Yeah. So here's Jesus's response to this evil and injustice. I like the Matthew 23:23 where he says, "Do not neglect the weightier matters of the law." And that is justice, mercy, faith. That's the Micah scripture too. It's like we have to remember peace and justice every step of our way. And then he says, resist the evil by loving the evil doer. So, it's like hate the sin, love the sinner, kind of a concept here. And then I like how it says, challenge him, be creative, surprise him with grace. That's something I've been trying out in my life. Surprise yourself, surprise your enemy, surprise your opponent with grace sometimes. And they don't know what to do with that sometimes. And that's what all of these we'll go through each of these eye for an eye, turn the other cheek stuff in a minute. But Mr. Bolton also talks about a man named Walter Wink. I didn't look him up as much as I did Ms. Weaver, but I did like this quote that Walter Wink is thinking about domination systems. And it helps us to understand the contemporary context of large-scale violence in America and beyond, a system that entraps us all in the amazingly self-destructive dynamic of violence responding to violence, and on and on and on. And his analysis of the role that the principalities and powers play in human culture helps us to make sense of why our structures are so destructive of human well-being. And if anybody's read The Grapes of Wrath, The Grapes of Wrath is about that. And that's probably why it's been banned in a lot of states. But I found this quote that John Steinbeck says, but the bank is only made of man. No, you're wrong there, quite wrong there. The bank is something else than men. It happens that every man in a bank hates what the bank does. And yet the bank does it. The bank is something more than men, I tell you. It's the monster. Men made it, but they can't control it. And I was thinking, as I was reading these two quotes, that you can say that about a lot of the powerful industries and the powerful, when you can put anywhere any of us have worked over the years. I work in a law firm. There's a power dynamic. I've worked at an insurance company, big power dynamic. And it's true that the human being kind of has to sit and just live with this power dynamic that we're uncomfortable with, because that's who we are. You have to work, number one. I'd love to go out and be the restorative justice person, but I also have to make money, so you have to think about all of those dynamics in your life that, you can beat yourself up. I have beaten myself up over it over the years, but you know what? It's the politics of power. This is who we are. So he talks about the Roman rules and then how Jesus's rules confuse people. So if someone strikes you on the right cheek, they are being the dominant person. They're using their dominant hand, because remember the left hand is evil for some reason.
That's the one you like.
Okay.
That's what it is. If you go over to Thailand, they don't have toilet paper, but their buckets, they have water on the left-hand side.
All right. Okay.
And all through the Middle East.
So
Yeah.
So when they're striking you on the right cheek with their right hand, that is symbolically, obviously it hurts,
Your
but
back and your hand.
it demeans you.
No, that's when.
Yeah, backhand somebody.
Yeah, it is backhanding.
Because it's your right cheek.
Okay,
So
yeah.
if you're facing someone, you're smacking them this way.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And that's it. He kind of describes that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you take that analysis further, then in order to strike the left cheek with that, because you have to use the right hand, you can't use the left.
Right.
Then it's going to go across someone's cheek, and then that person's going to get hurt. So you're going to hurt yourself. And so surprising them by turning the other cheek actually makes them off guard, But we'll talk about the symbolism of surprise in a minute. But there's another example of a Roman soldier could command a Jewish peasant to carry his pack for 1 mile, but there's all kinds of army regulations. He couldn't command them to walk 2 miles. And so if you turn and you walk another mile, the soldier might be happy because he doesn't have to wear his pack for another mile, but he's also worried that he's going to get in trouble because he's breaking the army regulations. So once again, we're surprising them. And then also, in Jewish culture, shame belonged to the one who sees someone naked, not to the naked person. I thought that was interesting. So in court, then, for the debtors, if you bring a debtor to court, then the judge could say that the debtor has to give him his shirt. But when you take off your coat and give it to him, you're not just exposing that person, you're exposing the injustice of the whole court system that allows the creditor to take a debtor's shirt as partial payment as debt. I know in our country, I don't know, I remember learning it in some history lessons that, there were lots and lots of debtors' prisons over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And we have finally gotten to the point. I think people who don't pay child support are still going to prison, right on that. But you can't go to court just because you've got a bad credit, or the creditor cannot put you in jail anymore. I mean, they can take you to court and put a lien on your house. They can do all the other things, but they can't put you in jail. So of course, 2 heroes of nonviolence. One of them is Gandhi. And I don't like AI. I'll just say that first. But I really liked what AI said about him, so I put it in here. So he viewed nonviolent protest not as a passive tool for the weak, but as an active soul force weapon. I love that word. Of the brave. His philosophy, known as Satyagraha, nobody's correcting me, truth force, demanded the courageous, disciplined resistance to injustice through love, suffering, and strict adherence to nonviolence in thought, word, and deed. I mean, he lived peaceful resistance. That's what he lived at the end of his life. And then, of course, the famous quote by Martin Luther King, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." And so some other quotes that they gave us. Gandhi said, "By its very nature, nonviolence cannot seize power." So you're getting yourself off of that power struggle. Nor can that be its goal. But nonviolence can do more. It can effectively control and guide power without capturing the machinery of government. That is its beauty. And then, of course, Martin Luther King said the old law of eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. That's
Mhm.
Or you could quote Tevye and say that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth leaves everybody blind and toothless.
blind and toothless. That's right.
Mhm.
So Martin Luther King says that true pacifism or nonviolent resistance is a courageous confrontation of evil by the power of love. Both morally and practically committed to nonviolence, he believed that the Christian doctor of love, operating through the Gandhian method of nonviolence, was one of the most potent weapons available to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom. And he really lived that too. I mean, you think of every time I think of Martin Luther King in a protest or on a march, it was nonviolent. I mean, he did not. I remember stories of Gandhi even stopping eating if his people were being violent.
Going on a fast.
Yeah,
Yes.
and so they really, really lived the nonviolent protest. I'm just, somebody might be more familiar with the game theory than me, but I wanted to put it up here because I have heard of it before, and I started going down the rabbit hole, and then I didn't go too far because it's a whole thing used in academics. But it's basically the game theory prisoner's dilemma is telling the people, you put two people in a room and you give them separate rooms, you give them a choice, and in one choice they can betray their fellow prisoner, but for their own individual gain. But if they cooperate and they don't betray their fellow prisoner, then then that cooperation pays and they are rewarded more. That's at least how the game is set up, I think.
Mhm.
Making sense? Anybody who's ever studied it?
There's reality shows that study it.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. Now that you say that,
Yeah. If they work together, everybody.
Those alliances, the
survives, but
alliances.
If they don't,
Yeah.
then I don't know what happens. People don't get $1 million.
In the end, though, only one person can win, though, right? I've always wondered about that. I don't watch
If
enough.
they had, well, there's other ones that
Yeah.
they are in a house. I don't know. I don't watch them, but I don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I do think that.
But if all the people said, you know what, we're just going to sit here and not play this game,
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't get aired on TV.
Right. Yeah. TV likes the sensationalism of the fight, So in Jesus's time, what he saw around him was the Jews either collaborated with the Romans and then they were called traitors, or they chose violent revolt. So it is important to note that the book of Matthew was written after the failure of the Jewish revolt in 6670 CE. Sorry, I should have put CE on there, and destruction of the temple. So this is Matthew is written to the Jewish people, saying, here's another alternative for you. And that's when Jesus rejects both forms of resistance, and that's when the nonviolent, it's all over Matthew. It's in 30 passages of the book of Matthew alone, according to our author. Ooh. I thought there was one more thing I was doing. So let me go back because it's faster than I thought it would be. What do you guys think of these quotes? Let me just ask that question in general. What do you think of who Gandhi was, who Martin Luther King was? Do we have someone like that now, or do we need someone like that now? How does this philosophy work in 2026?
My Tai Chi teacher recommended this book to our class, and it's called Rest is Resistance.
Oh, I just read that in
Oh,
class.
did you?
Yeah.
Rest is
Rest is
resistance.
Resistance. And it came out of kind of, and you can help me here because Coral.
By
Tricia
Hersey.
Hersey, Hersey.
And her ancestors were slaves, and she remembers her great grandmother or grandmother meditating because they worked literally sun up to sundown and then some. And she remembers her grandmother sitting for 30 minutes with her eyes closed. And that was her renewal and her ability to
She has a ministry that's called NAP
the
Ministry.
nap ministry.
Say that again. What?
The nap.
NAP
NAP nap.
And it's
NAP
kind of
ministry.
a revolt against the capitalistic grind.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah,
White supremacy
and white supremacy, yeah, and that's kind of where it
and
started in this
patriarchy.
country.
And
I mean, we're
patriarchy.
built on slavery, so, and slaves could not violently revolt.
Right. Right.
So they had to figure out their own way of resistance, which was singing spirituals or, you know, however they could find joy in their life, I guess. And
Well, and even 30 minutes, nap, meditation, the mindfulness exercises does change you. It just, it calms the soul, so to speak. I think that's kind of the best way that I would describe it if I give myself those 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, let's face it. Capitalism is based on greed for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the response to capitalism is.
it's
Yeah.
hard because, like Jane said, you have to work.
Yeah.
And so you kind of either buy into the rat race mentality of some sort, or I don't know, figure out a lifestyle that
Yeah. In America now,
I mean,
you can live without banks. I know people that do not put their money in banks, but it's a very different. I mean, to me, it would be scary, not to have at least what I would call a safe place for my money, So the insurance. I tell people all the time. I've been an insurance lawyer for 40 years. It's like, well, it is a necessary evil. I use those words because everybody calls me Darth Vader. No one in this room has done that.
so
But I also will tell people, yes, sir. Yeah, I will also tell people that, because nobody knows what insurance defense work is. So I say, okay, do you have insurance on your car? Yes, I do. All right. Your insurance company hires me to defend you
Mm-hmm.
when you're in an accident. And then they're all like, hey, well, that's not so bad. You see? It is nice to have a lawyer that you don't have to pay for if you get in an auto accident, So it
Who
is.
was the author of that book?
Tricia, Pricia, can't remember if there's Percy, Herse.
Hershey.
Percy, not Hershey.
Yeah,
There's no H, there's no.
No
the
H.
Second syllable.
I know. I have trouble saying her last name.
And I know that, even today, when we're looking at the politics of today and, how angry both sides can get, the reason why the Minnesotans got the Peace Prize for their work was because they responded to violence with peaceful protest. I mean, if anybody's ever gone down to one of these protests that we have had in Kansas City, there is no anger, which kind of surprised me. It's all about joy and peace and finding people who think like you to just march and there's a joyful. It just really surprised me that there's a joyful atmosphere. But that's what I think of now, when you have a group together that they think alike. And all you do, you just imagine Martin Luther King, on that bridge in Selma.
I think that maybe your experience of, let's say, a protest on the plaza is
Yeah.
very different than
Yeah.
walking across a bridge.
Yeah.
in
I agree.
Selma.
I agree.
Definitely.
We've been in
I've thought of that
Minnesota.
too. Yeah.
We've been in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Peacefully protesting,
Mm-hmm.
and there have been a whole bunch of undertrained, masked, well-armed people doing remarkably unkind things, I don't think there'd be a lot of love and joy. There would be a commitment to nonviolence.
Right.
Because what choice do you have?
Yeah, there's
You-
difference.
In
Yeah,
other words,
I've thought of that
this may
too.
be
It's
a
very
sickness-
different.
Maybe it is cynical. People who use nonviolent violence are also people who can't equip themselves to respond in kind.
Say that again. What does that mean?
People who resort to nonviolence are people who can't arm themselves
Okay,
in order to respond violence to violence.
right.
People who can respond with violence do that.
Generally do.
Generally,
They can, or they choose not
or
to.
they choose not to.
They may
Yeah.
choose not to.
Well, yeah, in our gun
When
culture,
they choose not to, almost always it's mutually assured deterrence.
Mm.
They do it because if I do respond in violence, the other guy's going to hurt me as badly or worse than I can hurt you.
yeah,
The conflict in the Middle East right
yeah,
now.
I think one-on-one though, I think that you can make that choice consciously
yeah.
without it being.
Well, there's always going to be that power struggle because the authority, whether it's a police officer or an ICE officer, they are standing there with power. They have the power. And so, I agree with David. I think that it's easy for me to go to the plaza and look at the funny costumes, people in chicken outfits, and it's just hilarious to me. But I also do not bravely go to the ICE facility, and I've thought about that, because that's the more dangerous thing. And Gandhi did that, and Martin Luther King did that. I mean, that bridge that they crossed over was named after a Ku Klux Klan guy, and so they knew that they were going to be beaten when they got to the other end of it. And they did it anyway, and you see all these, historically, you see these pictures of them just kind of getting dragged away,
Mhm.
and they do so peacefully.
Yeah,
That's the bigger challenge,
yeah.
I think. And I do think the Minnesotans did try that. I mean, I think they got closer to what Martin Luther King and Gandhi has
Which
taught.
really is amazing because they're well armed.
Yeah. In Minnesota, you can walk around with arms.
I was going to say, as far as Gandhi and Martin Luther King, some of his advisors and followers had gone to India, such as Howard Thurman, who is considered a mystic and Black activist. He wasn't so much on the front lines, but he advised. And he and another couple who were part of I believe, the Mennonite. And I read a book about her mother especially. And they ran a house in Atlanta where people could come and rest, or the people who were coming to work in the civil rights movement could stay. But they had gone and met Gandhi and talked to him about his philosophy of nonviolence. And I think they brought it back.
Dennis.
Well, we're all talking about protest, but sometimes the protest is a boycott, and that happened in Montgomery City where they had the bus boycott. It didn't happen in just one day. It took over a year of not riding the bus. You had to walk or carpool or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't easy, but on and on and on, they finally wore them down. And that was nonviolent, but that was that was a way of protesting nonviolently, and it took a long time, but
Yeah.
worked.
A lot of protest has to be a sustained effort.
Yeah.
It isn't once and done.
Right.
Which is
Beyond the party.
5051 is. 50501 is the one that runs most of the protests down on the plaza. We're just committed to nonviolence. In fact, they handed out, I went to a couple of them, and they handed out flyers about being nonviolent.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about the bridge. Of course, what that did accomplish was through the brutality of Bull Connor and those policemen, and national news being there, it kind of brought it to, you know,
You couldn't turn away.
Yeah, the awareness.
No,
It's the awareness of it.
or like in the film Gandhi, you know, those people, I think it's four abreast, they march up there, get clubbed, you see people drag them off, next row.
Yeah, that image
So
is
all
in
the
my head
brutality
too.
just exposed the other side's,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
And the massacre at, I forget where that was, where everybody was just sitting and the British came up and just mowed them down.
Yeah. I've been struggling as we're going through our times. I mean, what is the church supposed to do? You know, it's to me, when a church is dedicated to the pursuit of peace, what does that mean for us in 2026? How do we teach restorative justice, peace and justice? You know, what do we do as a church without being political? You know, I mean, that's going to be the dilemma for every church now, because if you are rising up, I mean, of course, I just always compare it to what the churches did in the Nazi time.
Mhm.
So some of them did resist quietly, you know, and others were collaborators. And so it's just really hard from a church's perspective if we're going to stay apolitical, but we do see injustice. You speak out against injustice. So what does the church do? I'm really asking because it's a real struggle for me.
Mhm.
You
I
know,
don't know as we have to be apolitical. What we cannot be is take sides.
Divisive.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have to kind of stick to,
I don't know if anybody's looked at that Facebook page that the Community of Christ, the First Presidency is putting out. And they're doing, and there's a new one out there, and I haven't listened to it yet, but there's like a
we have like mini podcasts.
mini podcast.
Yeah, I've listened to
about
Stacey
what the
Cram.
Church,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I have listened to Stacey Cram's.
So I don't know if that's practical.
It wasn't.
Not
But,
really.
well, but all three of them take turns.
Yeah, maybe we can study that. Maybe I can, you know, get
I
excerpts
just
from
saw
it or
there was a
something.
new one posted and I
Okay,
haven't
on the
listened.
that's what the CIMM thing means, you know.
Okay.
Maybe we can do that in a congregational meeting.
Jay,
Yes.
I think that to address it, the church as a whole is probably the right way to do it. But there are also individual churches who have options. During Ferguson, my daughter-in-law, who was a priest in Hightower, in St. Louis, in Forest Park, Tower Park, opened her church as a sanctuary to get away from the tear gas and to get away from the beauty. How the riots spilled into that part of town, but that's what she felt compelled to do, was to open the church as a place for sanctuary. Now that's different than the church with a capital C, but
Yeah.
maybe there are things that individual churches of all faiths,
Mm-hmm.
when there's a conflict in their community, might be called to do.
Like there was a church our congregation in Lawrence that opened during, I think it was
Ice storm.
ice storm. Yeah.
Or a very
You know, and they opened their doors for the homeless. I think in the end they got in trouble because you really can't do that, you know, for liability purposes, you know, in our church. But they did it.
better to apologize.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing.
Forgiveness later.
But they made the news over it. They just opened their doors because they had showers, they had heat, you know, and so kind of opening the doors for people. That's one idea. Dennis.
Well, what do you say we can't be political? Jesus was political.
Yeah.
I know. That's what we keep talking about in this chapter is that, you know, when you go back and look at that quote from let me go back and find it. Justice, righteousness is the kingdom of God. So thirst for justice a way of life of justice. This is what Jesus taught. And it was political. I mean, he chose to resist the Romans, but in a very different way than the other people around him. He chose I don't know how to turn the other cheek in our world.
He also resisted the power of the Jewish power structure.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, but what I've kind of learned in seminary is that we don't have to be apolitical. We can be political, but we cannot be
Partisan.
partisan. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for.
Can we both be political and not partisan?
Well, I mean,
That's a
if you're
biggie.
talking about, justice and peace, I mean, you do it more from what is right than what either side is saying.
But you get into the what is right debate.
Well, yeah, you do. But I mean, if you're trying to be Christ-like,
Yeah.
I guess it would be the old, what would Jesus do or say?
Well, and I like how in this chapter, what Jesus said to do was to surprise your opponent. I really like that, surprise with grace.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think of in my own life is whenever I find somebody at work that they are on the opposite side of me on the political spectrum, we can argue for a while and we can, faithfully disagree, like is a good term from our church. But then when I do find that sometimes we start getting upset with each other. And so for me, the better thing to do then is to find something that we do have in common that we can talk about, and so I think it's important to listen to people on the other side of your political view. And I think it's important that you find something that you can agree on.
Okay. This goes back to the role of the church. Sometime in the last decade, the notion of civility and the loyal opposition went away. And there's no more loyal opposition where you can share ideas and find common ground.
Mm-hmm.
You're the enemy.
It's a struggle. I know.
And I think it becomes arguably becomes the role of churches to restore that when there's an opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what we preach every Sunday, because it doesn't matter, what political side you're on when you get up in front of the church to preach. You have to preach peace. I mean, to me, that's the number one thing from our church that you have to preach.
And policy disagreement can be peaceful. And it kind of, it probably hasn't always been, but it's been a lot more peaceful than it is now. But, you can have different ideas and different views about things. And it doesn't have to be hate-filled and violence-filled and like you said, someone doesn't have to be the enemy.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. In our society right now, it's set up where you have to have enemies. There has to be an enemy.
The person and not, figure
Both
out.
Both sides do it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, then there's the quote. Don't raise your voice. Improve your argument. That is how you're supposed to talk with one another. You're not supposed to shout at each other. You're supposed to improve your argument.
Yeah.
What are your persuasive skills? Do you have the right idea or not?
Right.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
I went to your favorite expert, AI,
Oh, good.
to determine the difference between political and nonpartisan.
Okay.
And it says, the core difference is that being political simply means being involved in government policy and societal issues, whereas being nonpartisan means operating without allegiance or bias towards any specific political party.
Mm.
Does that help any?
No.
Try different AI.
With those definitions, we can be both
Yeah.
political and nonpartisan.
Yeah.
So that's not an either or kind of an AI
It's
question.
basically saying,
Okay. I thought we were,
political, you're involved in
yeah,
societal issues. You're involved in the life of the country,
right,
and there's nothing wrong with that.
yeah,
Being nonpartisan means you simply aren't biased towards one point of view or one party or one organization all the time, except for the church.
okay. One of the best things I have done in my past for my civic duty was I was one, they call them challengers, I don't know why, but they have a Democratic challenger and a Republican challenger at every voting place. I did not know this before I actually did it in Missouri. And all that meant was if there was a question, like there would be somebody who would come and their address didn't match the polling place. And so what we would do is the Republican and the Democrat, we would get together and we would look at it and we would find the right place for that person to vote and we would agree. And then that we would either guide that person to another polling place or we would let them vote. There was never an argument. I mean, I thought it was going to be volatile. That's why they got a bunch of lawyers to help them. But it wasn't at all. It was so peaceful that I thought, oh my God, we really do have a good voting system. We really do, So maybe that's what we're talking about, at least part of getting involved. I need to do that again. So what else? I mean, I do think, obviously we have some time to spare, but it's been on my heart, and I think it's on a lot of people's heart, of what do we do? What does it look like to resist? Creative resistance is what Bolton called it. Have you seen creative resistance or non-retaliation work in your life? Not in our history, but in your own life, have you seen it? It's a good question.
Well, I think what Dennis said too about boycotting, right now you see, you can look up the list of companies that support things that you don't want to support
Man,
and choose to boycott them. And oftentimes it does come down to money, probably ultimately all the time.
it does.
So I don't know.
That's really hard too.
It is hard. With capitalism and corporate taking over. And there's power in money. So it's so complicated. There's, it's really a complicated thing. It's many layered and I don't know.
There are groups that are targeting specific commercial enterprises that they're encouraging their members to boycott. And it's for the very reason Joyce is talking about. They support some issue.
But once again, that's going to have to take years of boycotting in order to make a difference, because corporations are so rich now. Stopping Amazon shopping
takes a large number of people.
A lot of time. It's really hard.
Look how long Gandhi worked for the British to leave India.
Yeah,
there
that's
was
true.
through 2 world wars.
So maybe that's it. It's small things that you stay consistent with year after year after year. That's something maybe we can choose as a church or as a congregation.
You live in an instant gratification society.
We do. We do.
You want to see results immediately, or it doesn't seem effective.
Like in 24 hours, so you can post it.
It's so true.
Of course, you can always make an AI meme and stick it on Facebook.
Honestly, every time I see a picture now on my Facebook or on my Google, I go and research it to see if it's true, because AI is so sophisticated now. you know? I mean, I kept looking for when they would finally take Trump's name is finally off of the Kennedy Center because of that judge rule. And I saw it like months ago. And then I Googled it, and that was some AI guy created that, after the judge ruled on it. You can't do it the very next day. I knew that that wasn't true, but I found that it was AI. And so now recently it actually is a real picture, so it's like, even the news is exhausting these days. You got to get the truth. You got to find that.
Unfortunately, a lot of people have chosen not to watch the news at all. So, their part of it is just ignorance will get me by.
Yeah.
But the question is, are those people better well, no, they're by definition they're not better informed, but are you better off avoiding the news if all you get from the news is misinformation?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's true.
Really.
Well, that's why, to me, there's misinformation all over the place. The better citizen job is to find that truth, find the actual truth, because you can find it. It's
Which
just harder
truth?
now.
Yeah.
I don't.
True.
Who's truth?
Yeah.
There's facts. To me,
There are that.
there are facts that you cannot deny facts. I mean, there was that, like I said last week, I always go to the judicial rulings, and yeah, maybe our justice system is broken too, but at least in the judicial system, you have to say the truth under oath, and you do risk going to jail if you lie. And so in the judicial system, there was recently a judge that told the Trump administration that they had to put back all of the monuments and the museum pieces on slavery because they were trying to make a different truth in America. I mean, it's like we have to live with slavery happened, It's good to go to the museums, and anybody who's been to the Holocaust Museum in DC, I mean, it's dark, but it's also good to look at the truth. So to me, I do think there's only one truth, but you have to fight to get to it nowadays, So
There was a really interesting thing on Facebook. No, it wasn't Facebook. It was on one of the news things on Bing. And this liberal guy decided to kind of see how people reacted when he wore one of the MAGA hats.
oh yeah,
And he went into areas where, there was a lot of MAGA people, and he got their viewpoint of how they automatically accepted him, and he was able to see kind of their thought process. And then he wore the same hat into an area where it's mostly liberals, and saw how people treated him in that state. And it really made him aware of the differences that made.
oh yeah.
And the perspective that people were coming from. So, it kind of gave him a truth to kind of see where he was at.
Because there's an instant reaction.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Right. It's very interesting. He put a lot of information in the article.
Yeah. Oh my God. So here is our prayer thought for the day. Crucified Jesus, help me not to retaliate. Help me to assert my dignity and the dignity of the other person by addressing the wrong creatively. Help me find ways to end and heal injustice nonviolently. I really like the heal word, and I like the creative word. If we can find, as a church, creative ways to heal injustice. I mean, anybody who's been down to the Center of Hope, knows that that's one creative way of healing injustice. I mean, and they're struggling. They're struggling for people. I mean, I'll have more announcements. I want to talk to Joyce a little bit more about it, but I went a couple Saturdays ago to help them paint because now the bathrooms in the kitchen are turquoise. It's a bit brighter for people. And Chris chose the paint. And there were all these volunteers from all over our mission center. So it's definitely our mission center. Every congregation in our mission center has found a way to adopt Center of Hope somehow. And Mission Road is a huge part of it. But they're still struggling daily. I asked him what he needed, and Jonathan told me that they need someone here every morning, 2 hours, to man the store because he's starting the cooking for the day, and he can't do both. And they can't afford to have a paid person with him. He's the only paid person. And so he needs volunteers. So I'm going to work with the Mission Center to see if maybe Mission Road can volunteer, so I'm not going to volunteer everybody, but I thought maybe we could volunteer like every Tuesday and all of us could sign up for one Tuesday a quarter or something. We have enough people here, and we kind of want to do it in twos too. I don't want to do it by myself. So do it in twos. So we're going to be talking to you about that as one creative way to heal injustice, because just allowing them in and there's food, there's decorations in there for people, they just want to live their lives in a meaningful way. That's all it is. So that's at least, I want you guys to be thinking of creative ways to heal injustice, because that's going to be something I would like to talk about more in the next year. So, all right.
Thank you.
All right.